Hello, and welcome to the Grace Fellowship Podcast, where we have conversations focused on spreading the fame of God and making disciples of Jesus Christ. Today, we come to the penultimate episode in our Running with Joy series, where I am being joined by two other pastors from Grace Fellowship. We discuss attributes of God and how they impact the way we live. I'm your host, Pastor Zach Watson, and returning to the show today, I have Pastor Marty.
Hello, hello.
And Pastor Pat.
Buenas tardes.
There we go. All right, fellas, well, welcome back to the show. We talked about this a little beforehand, but I just got to be honest, guys. Like, I'm jacked up for today's show. Like,
Yeah.
I think I've been excited from like when I knew this week was coming. So like, you might have to calm me down.
Yeah.
Like I get that Chicano blood flowing. I'm like, we going speaking too fast. You know,
We're used to that. He speaks Mexican American.
That's
so
right.
it's
That's
good.
right. Like, yeah, this is the irony of it here. So like, I am actually half Mexican, and I can speak like what we would say only the good words, which means the bad words.
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
But like Pat is fluent in Spanish.
that's right.
This is depressing.
Spanglish, as we call it.
People don't know that it's a language in Oregon.
Oh, that's right.
Yeah.
Story for another time. All right. Well, anyway, I'm excited about it. We're going to start like we do with a scripture reading, and then we'll get into telling you guys the attributes. We're doing two today that we're talking about. So I'm going to start by reading from Psalm 102. Oh, actually, before I do that, let me quick reminder. In the notes below, there is a link to a study guide, a weekly devotional. If you'd like to participate in that way, make sure to avail yourself of that resource. Just go in and click on that blue link, and it'll take you to the PDF. All right, so Psalm 102, verses 25 through 28. Of old you laid the foundation of the earth, and the heavens are the work of your hands. They will perish, but you will remain. They will all wear out like a garment. You will change them like a robe, and they will pass away. But you are the same, and your years have no end. The children of your servant shall dwell secure. Their offspring shall be established before you. These four verses are loaded with monumental truths. There's all kinds of stuff in here about truth, existence, worldview, how you live, and so on. But for today, in this like rich text of these theological treasure trove here, we're going to talk about two things, two aspects of God's character. And instead of hinting out for it, we're just going to say what they are today. Today, we're talking about immutability.
One.
And eternity, right?
Two, dos.
So you guys go ahead and help for the
Spanish.
viewers and
Nice.
the listeners here. There we go.
Hand
We're gonna have
gestures
a
this week,
Spanish theme
everybody.
here.
That's the extent of my Spanish
Look below
vocabulary.
for the transcript, right? Anyway, so you guys go ahead. Would you give us a definition of what we're talking about when we use those big old theology words?
Yeah, sure. I'll go with the eternality or eternity. Then you can knock out the immutability one, and we can work off each other. But basically, eternality is the reality that God has no beginning, no end, nor succession of moments in his own being. And we'll flesh that out in a little bit. And he sees all of time equally vividly, past, present, and future, yet God sees events in time, like you and I do, and even acts in time. Almost sounds like maybe that's contradicting itself because he's outside of time and sees everything all at once, but he's also sees events in time and acts in time. Another definition might be that God's entire, simultaneous, and perfect possession of infinite, boundless life. And then yet another, because every book and every guy's got a slight modification of them, but whether one considers the past or the future, God alone is discovered to be permanent and lasting. His existence is without beginning, and it will never end.
Really good. So I think a good point there, too, that you just made. So, guys, we're talking about incommunicable attributes here. These
That's
are
right.
things that are only within God. So it's funny you said, like, every guy does it a little bit differently. That's legit. Like, I have a gazillion theology books, and everybody defines them differently because we're struggling in this sense a little bit to define something that's not like us, which is totally okay.
Yep.
I don't know about you guys. I do not want a God that I can fully define because he ceases to be God.
Right.
And that's wonderful that he's beyond us. So I want to point that out because out of these two, that's probably actually the softball of the pair.
Yeah.
When we talk about it. So for immutability, let's get a working definition for us.
So I'll take a similar approach as Pat as speak to it a few different ways. So verse Malachi 3:6 is one of the key verses. For I, the Lord, do not change. Therefore you, O children of Jacob, are not consumed. So immutability is defined as God is not subject to mutation or change, or in other words, he does not change. So being that he's immutable or does not change, his character and being can experience no change or mutation. God cannot grow more or less powerful.
Right.
He can never cease to be holy, just, good, or true, as wisdom and knowledge cannot be increased or decreased. Also, it could be said, it is impossible for his character or being to undergo any kind of mutation. His power cannot be augmented or diminished. Another way to say what we said a few sentences ago, he never learns nor forgets. He cannot be anything other than perfectly holy. And human beings is another story.
Yeah.
We'll get into.
Okay. Obviously, incommunicable.
Right.
We are not the same. And let me just say something to the listeners or the viewers. Like, if you're still with us, if you didn't go, I'm out already, right? I get it. And I've had this conversation with people. They're like, my brain can't do it. I'll get a headache. I can't go down this rabbit hole or whatever. And I just want to give you an encouraging pastoral word here. And that word is nonsense. All right. Look, you can stick with this. I get that it's beyond us and it's bigger, but you can do it. I was telling my kids, I said, the sun is 27 million degrees. And you go, well, I could kind of get that. No, you don't. You don't get what 27 million degrees is. You get what hot is, but 27 million degrees, whole other level. But that doesn't mean we don't study about it. We don't learn it. We don't understand photosynthesis and all these things. Don't cop out and say it's too big for me, because you miss the treasure that's in these two things. These are my two favorite things to think about. When you see me at church and I look like I'm gazing off into nowhere's land, like you guys have seen doing this kind of thing.
Zach's checked out.
This is probably what I'm thinking about. Right? So it's beautiful and wonderful. Let's dig in. Fellas, what is it that these things are going to tell us about our great God? How does it expand our vision of who he is?
Well, let me just add one thing to your pastoral word of encouragement is that, there's two sides to this God of ours. A, he's transcendent and wholly other and something we don't get or can't really relate to. But on the other side of that coin, he's immanent, meaning he's near, he's close, and he's tender with us. Yeah. And so, while both of these definitely would tilt towards the transcendent side of God, use this as an opportunity to foster the awe that you have at God. As you sit there and go, I really can't even understand that. That's cool. And then go, but my God is that. Yeah. And yet he still loves me. What? That's where you can stir the affections, even if you're not quite tracking and processing with all this stuff. It's not like we are either. We're not experts, but... The more you think about it, the more you study it, though, the more you do kind of get some handles, and it can stir the pudding of your affections even more. Yeah, to mix some metaphors there.
We will get to the point where you realize these two very incommunicable attributes have very personal implications for the way that you live your life and the way you understand who the Lord is. So we'll get to that. Hang with us as we get to this first part.
Well, yeah, back to the question. Implications for what it means about God. First of all, he's timeless in his own being. He's timeless. Before the mountains were brought forth, or ever you had formed the earth and the world, from everlasting to everlasting, you are God. Psalm 90, verse 2. In Job, Elihu, one of his counselors, says to him, the number of God's years is unsearchable. So the fact that God never had a beginning or an end, it means he's eternal. And it comes from the fact that God created everything. Before God created everything, there was no matter, nothing. Only the immaterial, meaning spiritual, Trinitarian God who spoke all things, even time, into existence. So that means God is timeless. He's outside of time.
Which is huge, like if you think about it. So if you know anything about science or if you study the cosmos at all, one of the things that we do know to be true, this isn't something that's debatable, all matter exists at the same time. It all has, whatever the origin is, it has to be the same. That's why people think Big Bang or whatever. But that's the thing we know about matter. It is neither created nor destroyed. So in order for something to be beyond that, to not have a beginning, means that it has existed forever by definition.
It has to.
But it's not even forever, because forever is a time, right? So it is, I think a very important part is we're talking about beyond time, the timelessness. Now that is not something we can comprehend, but I do think we can get an idea of getting our arms around that if you just realize we exist in succession. Succession of eternal events.
One moment after another after another.
Exactly right. But if the Lord does not, and if he is not eternal, he's not omniscient.
Nope.
He doesn't know everything, right? And
he's not immutable. He's changed.
Not immutable, right?
I mean, there's a ton of other
because he can't learn, right? If he can, and these are things that are being eaten away at in today's world. People say, "Well,
within the church, you mean?"
Within the church, there's people that'll say, "I don't like these events that happened in my life. That means that God knew they were going to happen. He didn't change anything about them. Therefore, I want to keep loving God.
He must not be omnipotent.
So I'm going to change that." And it ends up falling away. These are linchpins for so many other things. What are some, when we move into the idea of immutability, what are some of the implications we get in there about God and his unchangingness?
Yeah, I think that, as I've heard R.C. Sproul say it, that God has the power of being, capital B, in and of himself. If and a light bulb went off for me years ago where Sproul made a statement about if there was nothing in the beginning, There was no God. There was no any kind of carbon matter. There'd be nothing now. Nothing produces nothing. Yep. So you have a choice. Either there's the matter is eternal or God's eternal.
Yep.
And God has the power of being even of himself. He's not contingent on any other thing. Yep. Everything else is contingent on God.
Which that fact that God does not change, like I can't help, like I want to write a song right now. Like that just, the idea of that's my God. Like I can trust in that. Yep. That is when you talk about him being a rock, you think about what an insufficient word, right?
Yep.
But this idea of the solidifying nature of who he is, and it's not something that he developed or became. It is his eternal nature that he does not change or does not move.
Herman Bavinck has this to say. He's a great Dutch theologian from, I believe, early 20th century. But he says this: the doctrine of God's I'll say that right. The doctrine of God's immutability is of the highest significance for religion. The contrast between being and becoming marks the difference between the creator and the creature. Every creature is continually becoming smarter, faster, slower, whatever the case may be. It is it is changeable, constantly striving, seeks rest and satisfaction, and finds this rest in God, in him alone, for only he is pure being and no becoming, because he's immutable. He doesn't change. I was going to say he started that way, but that's not true, because he didn't start.
Yeah.
He's always been that way.
Always been that way.
Right.
It's just mind-boggling. Yep. That's where the transcendence. Just go back and keep going.
Yeah.
A billion, gajillion, Googleplex, if that's really a number of years, just scratching the surface.
Yeah. I want to think about the idea that even like things have been around as long as they've been around, right? So like whether or not you want to debate old or younger or whatever and stuff like that, not what we're doing here. But the concept of that's when time started. So when you think about the oldest of oldest things, it just has no effect on God. He's outside of that concept. And then thinking about how amazing that would be if you were a creature that was not confined. Well, I don't want to say God's a creature. He's not a creature because he wasn't created. But if you were a being that was not confined by time, but you decide to operate and function within time as a condescending thing to do towards your creation. What a blessing and kindness to us. He doesn't have to go that way.
That's right.
But we would be all... Your mind might be broken now just thinking about it. Can you imagine living in it, right?
And so I think that you all can see, if you're listening to us, how interwoven these attributes are. We were talking about his immutability, but now we're kind of talking about his eternality.
Right.
And there's this great little 4 or 5 word quote. It says, time is but the fringe of eternity. All of time is but the fringe of eternity. And since our God is eternal, existence itself is just fringe to God. He who does not become. And that is our God. That should get you fired up, man. That's where the transcendence works to stir the affections. It might be hard to grasp. Don't sweat the grasping. Just let it stir your affections.
When you're right now, we are all, no matter where you are listening or where you're watching, we are all on top of a piece of earth. Even if you're on a boat, you're on a piece of earth. That is stability that you've taken for granted. Nobody thought about that before I probably said it. You weren't thinking, I've got stability. And that is not real stability.
No.
That's a falsehood. Like there could be, if anybody is spending time in California, like that could go away like that. But God is literally that stable thing upon which our faith, our destiny, however you want to think, like everything is planted on him and it does not move. I think it's interesting when you were reading the definition, Marty, immutability is actually a negative definition. It's not a positive proclamation.
Changeable.
Not mutation. No mutation. It cannot occur. So if the debate of is there something God can't do? Yeah, he can't change. And that's awesome.
What you just said, Zach, made me think about, there's a Greek philosopher, Heraclitus. He said that one of his famous statements he made, man cannot step into the same river twice. We're so used to change. That's the world we live in. And but with God, he would not be God if he was, just as Pat mentioned, he would be becoming, and therefore he would not be God. He's perfect. His perfection requires no change, no mutation. And even the things that we see that seem, you mentioned rock. You look at the mountains and they seem majestic, but you look close enough, they're changing. They're
eroding, falling down, exploding.
Exactly.
Take a pick.
But we worship a God that does not change, and even the things He gave us in Scripture, like for Moses in the burning bush, but yet it was not being consumed. It was a sign of his eternality as well as his immutability, and the fact that the bush was not consumed as it burned.
That's right.
You know,
and the very name he offered him there speaks to his eternality. I am who I am.
That's a beautiful part of the way God's created things, like in physics and stuff like that. You think about Newton and these different kind of these laws, like that matter not being destroyed, but it's constantly changing, and then there's a degradation. We've changed since we started this podcast.
Yep.
Right in front of your eyes, or in front of your ears, or whatever. But God put those things, those principles that everything does change as a not a contradiction, a contra-exposition, so you would see this is different. So we talked about holiness like last week. Like, again, this is another way in which I am not like that.
That's right.
Your paradigm is change, and I am different from you in that. And again, it's just, it can go on and on and on. And we would, and this is one of those ones where I don't mind putting down a 4-hour podcast, but we have wives and children. Right. So we will.
It's interesting that you refer to rocks and how they are mutable in our Earth, right? The volcanoes explode. I was looking out my window on May 18th, 1980 and watched Mount St. Helens blow up because I lived 90 miles from there.
Wow.
And I lived in Guatemala, so I've seen lava fly out of things. I've experienced earthquakes, but rocks still, though, in our context, generally are solid. Yeah. And so the scripture, authors of scripture in Psalms, refer to God as a rock more than 30 times. Not in the rock's mutable sense, in the rock's, in our perspective, immutable sense, shall we say. The Lord is my rock and my fortress. For who is God but the Lord? And who is a rock except our God? Meaning nothing else is a rock except our God. I say to God, my rock. And this is David lamenting. Why have you forgotten me? So just because he's immutable and eternal doesn't mean that he always feels like he's our BFF and he's right there with our back with the sail in our winds. Many times we might feel forsaken by him, even though we are his sons or daughters. He alone, it says in 62, is my rock and my salvation. And so those that poetic literature there is used to help anchor the immutability of God to him and gives us confidence.
Yeah. And what a beautiful condescension and kindness that the Lord's given us the ability to think of him in those ways.
That's right.
That he gives us rocks. Next time you're standing on Stone Mountain doing your little hike or whatever, realize that rock is there.
Ponder.
So you can think about God's unchanging ability. And it's a shadow of it, right?
That's right.
But what a grace he gives to us. All right, so I want to move on just because there's something here that I could see if you're thinking about this, particularly in the life of Jesus, right? So we think about Jesus is God, and but we're talking about him being unchanging. We're talking about him being eternal. But when we think about the life of Christ, well, he changed.
Absolutely.
He was a baby, and then he wasn't,
He was
right?
a zygote.
Yeah, and there was a time when he was born, right?
Yeah.
Like we celebrate that every December, right? So I mean, I think it's important to address this in the aspect of how is that possible? How can he be immutable and eternal, though we've seen this kind of change? We've seen him go through a succession of events.
Yep.
Yeah, I'll start. Jesus is one person with two natures. He has a God nature, 100% God, 100% man. Yep. So his divine nature never changed, nor will it ever change. But he took on that human nature as part of, we call it the hypostatic union, whenever he came and became man for the purpose of being prophet, priest, and king, and but yet his divine nature has never changed.
Yeah.
Correct.
Jesus, the man, the human nature, was not and then was. He took on that human nature, and that doesn't change his nature as God. Right? And this is something I would encourage people, like, we don't talk about it a lot anymore because like 1,100 years ago, 1450 something, there was a Council of Chalcedon. This was a big deal in the church, and they snuffed it out. They said, we're done. We dealt with it. Go back and read like how Chalcedon talks about it. I won't read the thing here. It's a little long, but like we solidified the idea that Christ was two natures in one person, and that's why there is no unchangingness in that divine nature, but we see him condescending, taking on that human nature in order to do the work that he did for us in the work of salvation.
Yeah, so scriptures tell us that Jesus grew in wisdom and stature. It says Jesus grew tired. It says in John 11, Jesus wept when Lazarus' death. I mean, there's change galore in the humanity of Christ, as much change as any of you or I have ever had. But like you said, equally important is that in his divine nature, there was no change. Never. And so, I mean, you got the Father himself speaking of the Son in Hebrews 1:8, saying, but of the Son, he, the Father, says, your throne, O God, is forever and ever. So that one verse there has got a ton of theological bonus points in there, because here we have the Father calling the Son God. So yet another verse establishing the deity of Christ, because there are a number of folks out there who will attack the deity of Christ.
Yeah,
well,
absolutely.
Here's the Father calling him that, and he's saying he's eternal.
Yeah.
And I think a great verse, we mentioned Moses in the burning bush, and the name that God the Father spoke to Moses saying, I am. We see in John 8:58 where Jesus is engaged with the Pharisees, and they're saying, he's talking about Abraham and how the Pharisees are challenging him, saying, hey, Abraham's our father. And Jesus makes a statement, before Abraham was born, I am. Yeah. He's using that same name for himself. Yep. And so we see how Jesus is raised his hand saying, yeah, I'm God.
Kind of got some deity going on. Yes. And the thing about John is that's like the thrust of his book. Yeah. He wants the most doltic reader, slowest guy on the block to pick up the reality. No, man, Jesus is God. And so he has Jesus 17 different times. And I got this out of the ESV Study Bible in the intro to the book of John. So it's not like I had some big theological tome. Half of y'all got this at home, I think. But there's 17 times where Jesus makes I am statements. 5 are absolute, where he just says, I am. And then 12 times, I am something. I am the door, I'm the true vine, I'm the way, the truth, and the life, I'm the good shepherd. I don't want to read them all, but the point is, as you said, 17 different times, he's dropping the I am on the people, establishing over and over and over his deity. Yeah. And this then harkens back to, like you said, Exodus 3:14, therefore he's eternal. Yep.
And I am is another one that really is really strong about that concept of immutability. That's that concept of when Moses is asking, what am I going to tell them when I go to these people? And they're not, who am I? Yep. And he says, you tell them that the I am sends you. It's that concept that would have been like the one who, so we've talked about aseity as well, the one that is self-existent, sustaining, this concept of the never-changing God. This is the nature of who he is. Yep. So for then Jesus to do that, when that union is existing. So when Jesus says, I am, he's talking about his divine nature that's taken on this human nature, but this actually here on earth, while he's existing, seeing that. This is just a mind-blowing type of thing to think about, is that the very one who has always been, is beyond time, steps into time, allows himself to take on this human nature to be able to suffer in that sense. Should we talk about impassibility? I mean, do we have another 4 hours real quick to talk?
That was something I wanted to add to this definition. We haven't got there. Let me interject that right quickly. The immutability of God doesn't mean that he's some automaton robot, I feel nothing. Not at all. I mean God in his divinity. Yes. Obviously, Christ in his humanity feels things, but in the divinity, God feels things too. He's not a robot. He does interact. And there's scriptures that say that God regretted that he made man. He regretted, he relented another time, changing his mind, perhaps. Oh, this gets thrown at us sometimes by skeptics. When Jonah went and preached to Nineveh, and they repented. And God relented from the disaster he was going to bring upon them. And Jonah was ticked off.
Oh, yeah.
And so a skeptic will go, well, see, your God's immutable. No, man. No. That's not what immutability means. God responds this way if his people respond this way, but he will respond that way if his people or any people respond that way. And this is all known and ordained and brought to pass by God since before time began, because he's omnipotent and he's omniscient, but he's still, that's why we said in immutability, he is outside of time, but he works inside of time. Yeah.
Which another way to think about this idea, like these are I don't like throwing around big words, but it's important to understand this concept of this anthropomorphic concept.
That's
where
right.
God is.
What does that mean? What does anthropomorphism mean?
Tic-tac. I got choked up there for a second. So it's the idea and the concept that God is interacting with us in human ways that humans can relate to. So when we think about something like, and people will call us a cop-out, that's fine, but for instance, God doesn't respond in the way that we respond. Because he already knows. He's incapable of responding because he knows all things. And since he doesn't change, he doesn't react ever. He only acts, which is another part of immutability that we're not talking about, is that God is never not acting. So he's always acting yet not changing, because he is the eternal. He is pure act, yes. But the idea of, people will use that as a way to try to trip people up. But the reality is this is kindness in God. There is no way for us to comprehend him. So he creates these things that you can get a glimpse of his nature and understand him. So like, for instance, in Genesis 18, when Abraham is saying, with Sodom and Gomorrah, God says, I'm going to destroy Sodom and Gomorrah. He goes, well, what if you got 50?
50 good guys.
Okay, yeah, if you got 50 good guys, righteous, we leave them. Yeah, and he works them all the way down to 10, and he says, if there's 10. Well, is God sitting there that we're making a deal? It's like Abraham trying to,
let's make a deal with Yahweh.
Right.
He's not. Like, God is showing his kindness. God knows Sodom and Gomorrah is getting waxed. Right? It's been ordained since before time. It doesn't change anything. But God is working with that so Abraham can understand his faithfulness, right, in that situation. So when we see those things, we got to, it's not that you go and look for, am I getting one pulled over on me? You need to go, this is gracious that this incomprehensible God is helping us to understand him in a manner that we can.
And I want to draw attention to that. It's something I mentioned a few weeks ago, perhaps here or elsewhere, is that we need to develop the art and the skill of training ourselves to see God's graciousness and kindness, not just in sunsets and roses and butterflies, but in sentences that you just innocuously threw out about a minute ago. That God condescended to give us language and to give us words to have the ability to understand him in some way. Just that alone is a gracious act of God that should stir some worship in us, that should stir some affections. Thank you, God, that we have a vocabulary and words that can convey some sense of who you are.
Yeah.
We could have been mutes with no communication, but God in his kindness says no. And so just another way for us to develop in ourselves this skill to learn how to have gratitude and worship God all the time. Without, just dropping into your knee and praying, which is totally cool as well. Yeah. It's a both and.
I think another aspect that's really key, a key facet of his immutability is one of the reasons why we can trust his promises is because he's immutable. If, let's say my wife were to come to me and say, Marty, will you always take care of me? If I answer yes to that question, I'm lying to her. I can't guarantee. I'm changing. I'm getting older. There may be a disease that comes. The Lord may take me at some point before. I can't make that promise, but we can trust in God's promises because he is immutable. And his promise 1,000 years ago, 2,000 years ago, yesterday will be the same and apply going forward. So,
and it's great to think that if we have a God that doesn't change, that means he won't change because of me. Right? Like, I'm not going to do something that's going to mess this deal up. And that's huge confidence, right?
Huge.
It's the idea of if there's not immutability, he's not faithful.
He's capricious. Right? It's just roll the dice. What version of God am I getting today?
Which is terrifying because if you're willing
with
to
all
go,
that power and everything else,
that's what I was going to say. That's
man.
one of the ones people don't usually fret on. They go all power, like. They'll get, like, atheists will give you that in an argument, all powerful. They'll even do that to make their argument when they're talking about the problem of evil. They'll go, all powerful, yeah. Well, if he's all powerful and he's capricious, or like he's got an attitude problem, or he flies off the, that's terrifying. That is terrifying. But he's not. He's always who he is in all of his capacity forever, beyond forever, beyond time, right?
Yeah.
So good.
It's unbelievable.
I want to just sit here and camp out like 18 scriptures I want to read here. Go Revelation 1, by the way, for the great I am. I love that. I am the Alpha and the Omega.
Yeah, which refers to both the Father and the Son.
Yes. And Revelation 4, again, like this, that's so good. All right, so I want to move on just a little bit here. We're going to get to the question of the day, which these questions are going to keep rolling over in this conversation because now the question of the day, if you're out there in YouTube land, put your comments down below and let us know your answer to this question. But it's how do these attributes impact your life? So fellas, we've talked about it a little bit here, but expand on how is it these two things impact your daily living, the way you look at your time here on this planet?
Well, I mean, one of them for me is, I kind of did them in pairs this time, but hope and confidence. I can hardly remember what I did last week. I mean, I know I went to the beach, but if you work with me here at church or in the student ministry, if you tell me something and you don't see me write it down, probably he's going to forget it. That's just how I am, man. And so that's a problem. That's one of my shortcomings, but not our God. 1,000 years is like a 3-hour watch to him because it says 1,000 years is like a watch in the night to you back in Psalms. Yeah. But then later on in 2 Peter, he quotes that, but then he also says a day is like 1,000 years. So what is it? Well, it's both. Because as we said earlier in our definition, he's outside of time, but in his condescension, he interacts to us or with us in time. So that means he is my next two. Sorry, guy. I'll let you go.
Yeah.
He's near. He's intimate with us.
Yeah.
When I was hurting, when my family moved to Guatemala and I felt abandoned by him, he was still there. He was there with me. That day felt like 1,000 years to him, Peter tells us. So he's this transcendent God, but he's also immanent, meaning near to us. Psalm 34:8 says, God is near to the brokenhearted, and he saves those who are crushed in spirit. Because he's not only outside of time, but he deals with us in time.
Yeah, that's really good to think about the idea of it's why, guys, again, why it's important to understand these attributes that might be a little bit hard to get your head around. So you have something like somebody, I've heard people say before, you shouldn't be dwelling on that sin because God forgot that. Like God's forgotten it, you should forget it too. I get it. In the scripture, it talks about our sins being separated from us. Yes, it talks about God in the context of him forgetting it. But he can't forget, right? Remember Marty's definition, he does not gain or lose knowledge. That never happens. The concept is this God who does not change, who never will forget the action that occurring, has forget about it. Right?
No.
That's
he remembers it, but he sees it covered with
grace.
Somebody's blood.
Exactly right.
Yeah, so again, that's the anthropomorphistic, I think I'm trying to turn it into an adverb. That's some anthropomorphism that God has given us. It's like I forgot about it, y'all. I didn't because I can't. But when I do, I don't. But if I were to think about it, I would simply see
the function,
the blood of Christ on all those heinous adultery-like sins you've committed against me, the faithful husband.
But if you don't understand that concept of the fact that it doesn't change, somebody says something to that, you get bad theology in your mind. Before you know it, it starts changing the way.
That's right.
And then in another time, you're thinking about, well, if God forgot that, did he forget his promise to me? And now I'm sitting here abandoned and everything's going wrong. And well, maybe God's not faithful. No. Stick to this fact. He hasn't forgotten. You know, that's never going to occur. He's bound to who he is, and you can count on that and rest in it. Sorry.
No, that's great. That's good stuff. So, one of the things I wrote down was, our family's going through a lot of changes right now. We're about to be empty nesters, you know, and I know it's crazy.
Congratulations.
I got 5 years for that.
Yeah, party. And so that's a big change. There's a lot of change going on. And I think about implications is with stability. And I wrote this down. I think this is strong and it speaks to what we're going through right now as a family. And it's going to be a hard adjustment because you think about that stage of raising your kids. There's an element where you unconsciously may think, hey, we're always going to be together, and as that starts to change, you start realizing that was a window of time, that's a phase that is passing away or has passed away. But I wrote this down. Such realities drive us to seek stability. Because of sin, however, we tend to look for permanence in things that are also changing, whether it's a relationship or bank balances, familiar surroundings, or something else. We all too readily seek stability in the created realm. And I grasped that too tightly. I grasped to things that are changing, whether it's my body thinking I'm always going to be able to do certain things, or I'm beyond that point now. But and moreover, we are eventually disappointed by such things, for everything in creation is subject to change, but trying to living knowing that he is the only true constant, the only one we can truly trust. Like Peter, who wanted to prolong the glorious encounter at the Mount of Transfiguration. Think about, trying to remember that moment, clinging to that moment, preserving it like a bug stuck to amber. We want to make our loved ones close and healthy and happy as we are with now long cherished memory. We grieve over decline and decay. Our bodies don't work as they did. Outwardly, we're fading away, but yet God is our only stability. He is our rock that we can cling to.
Yeah, that's so good.
Yeah,
I love the way you say that, and in the vulnerability in saying that, because when I'm talking about that, I'm kind of joking a little bit about that. You see me wandering off and gazing, but these really are the things that, like, if I ever get in like a head-on collision, it's going to be because of God's immutability, probably. But the reason I do this is not because I'm strong and I'm smart and I can hold these big. It's because I'm weak. It's because I'm aware of my frailties. So
confidence.
Exactly right. So like I'll think about that. Like if I go on a run and it's a little bit too. If I go on a fast-paced walk, I'm not quite running yet. I'm trying to get back to that. But my heart starts kind of I'm going a little bit hard. I stop and I think, man, that heart is going to stop one day. Those beats are numbered and God knows what they are. I can trust in this God who's not going to change. Yep. You go out and you get an unexpected bill or something like that. And I was like, I don't have enough to float that. What are we going to do? No. Wait, God knew about this.
Yeah.
It didn't affect anything, and nothing has changed in his plan that was written for me since before time began and will be here forever after time. No, time doesn't actually end now, but throughout eternity. The Lord knows all these things. So that's why I say to you guys that are out there listening, study the Son. Like, don't let this thing get past you. Actually, both. I was thinking about the metaphor from before, but yes, right? So that's what I mean by that is it might be super hot and you might not have a comprehension for it. Study the Lord. Study these concepts. Don't be satisfied with, I got a little bit of a grip on that. No. Dig deep. Turn off the Netflix. Don't go to that Braves game. Well, nobody's going to that right now. Do whatever it is you need to do to sacrifice the time, because this is more valuable. Understanding these things about your God, this is where you want to run deep.
And that's why personal time in the Word is so important.
Oh, man.
Spending 10 to 12 minutes a day, that's not a huge ask.
Yeah.
In prayer, and then an equal amount of time in reading the Word, and then just writing some thoughts down. What did this passage teach me about God? Yeah. Just knock out 2 sentences.
Yeah.
What does it teach me about mankind? What does it show me that God has done to fix the problem with mankind?
Yeah.
And that's the way you can train yourself. You don't have to go read a book. I would rather you open up the scriptures. If you need a book to help you, that's cool, but just start at the beginning and watch the Bible Project video first on that book. I'm going to endorse those fellas so you can have an understanding what the big story of that book is and how it hangs from the big story of redemption.
It's fun. I was actually listening this past week to a panel at the seminary I went to. It was from a few years ago, and they were like having, we'll have alumni come back, and a guy will give a speech. One of the professors was giving a speech I was interested in. Afterwards, they do a Q&A, and people kept asking him, like, what book do you recommend for this? What book do you recommend for that? And he was trying to be really nice, but you could tell how frustrated he was getting. Like you need to read the Bible. He kept saying, read the Bible, read a lot of it, read it in long chunks, and do it regularly. Like, doesn't mean the other stuff's bad, but that's where you get it. And Pat, I think you nailed something that's so important. You're constantly reading through that saying, what does this tell me about who God is? God wrote that book for a reason, to reveal himself in this special, clear way to us. Therefore, ask the question the book's written for. And these things, I'm not saying like you were going to go spend an hour in scripture tomorrow and all of a sudden be like, oh, immutability, nailed that. Whatever, Hodge, like I got you. These theological guys have been doing this for hundreds of years. There's a reason, by the way, that people have been studying these things for these concepts literally for thousands of years. Because there's still things to be studied about them, right?
Yeah.
Dig in deep to it. Spend whatever 85, 90 years you might have in this stuff, not other garbage. Do this. It's a life well spent, right?
Look, in regards to immutability and its benefits, shall we say, in my life, a great quote from Luther is, the greatest and only consolation of Christians in their adversities is knowing that God lies not, but does all things immutably. And that his will cannot be resisted, it cannot be changed, nor can it be hindered. So since God made promises to Abraham, and we're preaching through that this summer, and I just picked a date. I know there's some disagreement on that, but I'm just going to go with my date. 4,111 years ago is when that first promise is made to Abraham in Genesis chapter 15. All of those promises have been fulfilled, and he is immutable. He doesn't change. He's the same yesterday, today, and forever. So guess what? The promise that he's going to come back and he's going to judge the world, and I'm going to judge angels and others with Christ, and I'm going to be in his presence forever, and it's going to be pleasures forevermore and joy unending. Like it says in Psalm 30, swimming in the river of his delights. Let that poetry get you fired up.
Oh, yeah.
It's coming, man. It is coming. As sure as all that stuff in the past has came, and it did, it's coming. And his immutability anchors it.
The fix is in.
Yep, that's right. It's rigged.
Yes. That's wonderful for us. Let's think about, like, talking about implications. We've talked about personally for us. Let's think about as a Christian culture right now, with all this stuff that seems to be changing so quickly in the United States of America, maybe, all those different things that can be very frustrating. And I'm in no way telling people not to, it's okay to be frustrated, right? It's okay to think that there's a legislation I saw that the word abortion is trying to become a hate speech. They're trying to make the word abortion hate speech, right? And you think, this is ridiculous. We can't, like, what's going on? Written. This was written. This was understood. It does nothing to thwart God's plan. Be frustrated about it. The Lord
try to change it.
Exactly right. But trust in the Lord. His glory will not be diminished. His rock will not be chipped away. His eternal plan had this written in it, whatever that may be. And you know what, guys? We might face an America you don't want to be in.
That's right.
You might face an America that doesn't want you in it.
That's right.
And with heaven forbid that we forsake, as the brothers and sisters before us didn't, that we're willing to go into the Circus Maximus or whatever to be able to stand up for the name of Christ. May that not be our cause. May we stand firm in understanding that this God does not change. He planned all of this since before forever. We can trust in him, and we will gladly take whatever he has fated out for us with joy and expectancy of the glory that awaits us, right? These things are not small and to be trifled with. They are hugely important again and again. Do not run away from them.
Yeah, and there's two sides of the coin in terms of his relationship with us is just a human race with immutability. On one side of that coin is his promises, his love for us does not change. But also, I think in terms of how we relate to the world, there's a knowledge that God will hold them accountable, and that will not change. And because of that, there's anger and there's frustration that will be vented on us because of that. So we should expect that the gospel will bring conflict. It will bring hate toward us.
Yes.
And so we shouldn't be surprised when that happens because they know they're accountable. They may try to suppress it, but right now is a great opportunity because there is a lot of fear. There's a lot of things changing, and we can bring into the conversation, hey, do you know something that does not change? God is the only one who does not change. Right. Let's talk about that, and what does that mean?
That's great, 'cause when I was thinking about this, I was really struggling to try to figure out how these might help us in evangelism. But boom, you just crushed it, brother. Yeah, you're worried about all this change, and it brings you great angst and worry. Well, let me tell you about the one who doesn't change.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
That's what I mean.
That's
The question we close with is the idea of how does this impact our ability at Grace Fellowship to spread God's fame and make disciples of Jesus Christ? First of all, this is the reason we talk about God's fame. He is glorious.
Yeah.
Like, if you don't have this God, why waste your time?
Yep.
Yeah.
Like, why would you talk about him? That a lot of times people pander because it's like the get out of jail free card or whatever. Dude, like that is the benefit of him. But the spreading his glory, talking about this magnificent, unchanging, everlasting, all powerful, perfect God, that should inspire us to proclaim. And I think one of the things you just nailed there was the idea that we trust in the grace that's coming to us for our redemption and our eternal glory. There is wrath that is going to be poured out. We are the instrument the Lord will use to separate who gets what. Right. We are the vehicle by which that goes out. The gospel is the vehicle, but we are the ones that testify to it. We preach these things. We teach them to the people that are next to us. So in making disciples of Jesus Christ, we need to talk about these things. We need to let people know this is who he is. This is how you follow. This is who Christ was. And this is what's coming. So it's the heartbeat of our ministry, the character of God. That's why we say it the way that we do. The character of God is why we do what we do.
And considering how mutable our society seems to be right now, I mean, it's like on steroids, the changeability of our society. It's mind-boggling with, 50 years of experience we've got, and you're in your 40s, right? So we've seen a little bit of life. We're not like, 70 or 80, but it's not the last 10 years, man. There's been more change than in the 43 or 42 before. Factored, I would contend.
Yeah.
And that it doesn't worry me. I'm not worried, but it ticks me off. It gets me fired up. It gets me discouraged. But then I think, my God is not changeable. He is immutable. Yeah. And he's called himself a friend to sinners. And I am a huge sinner. So that means he's my friend. So if the guy who's my friend today ends up being my enemy tomorrow because I think abortion's wrong, or pick your topic, right? Whatever it is. Some guy who I thought was a brother in the faith might turn on me.
Yeah, absolutely.
Literally tomorrow, but certainly figuratively in the next 5 years. Yeah. My God won't.
That's right.
And so I want to be as immutable as I can be to him in my faithfulness to him.
Absolutely.
It motivates me.
And I think, a challenge we have laid before us as a church and as followers of Christ is God's word, by implication, does not change either.
That's right.
God's word is immutable, and we do not need to change our convictions to align with cultural norms.
That is correct. Amen.
So we need to be careful of that.
Yeah.
And this is what we build our church, our doctrine, our faith, how we act, how we do life is built on God's immutable word.
Right. Absolutely.
And it's going to lay before us as believers and the churches. There's going to be a test.
Yep. Yeah.
Are you willing to be faithful to God's word, or are you going to carry the world pressure and peer pressure and cave?
Yep.
So
if
that's
you think
coming.
that you need to change that word, there's no possible way you can say you're doing that for the glory of God, because it's a direct change or direct conflict to who he is, since he does not change. There's something I think really good about thinking about this aspect of ministry and kind of we're talking about, and realizing this incommunicable attribute of God's immutability is a great thing to remember, that we are mutable, in the sense that when we're sharing the gospel about this God who does not change, which therefore means the mercy that he has extended, the grace that he has told you is available through Jesus Christ, that will not go away.
It's not a limited time offer. He will do what he said.
Here's the great part about his unchangeability nature. If you are lost out there, or if you are sharing with lost people, you are not immutable. Therefore, you can rest upon that grace that has been promised, and you can say, I will change. My heart will lay down my own self-worship to the foolishness that I've had of my own throne, and I will submit to this God. And at that, on the back end of that immutability becomes your friend, buddy.
That's right.
That is your salvation. The fact that that gift is there, unwavering, no matter what you've done, no matter how horrible you think you are. God has seen all that in his eternal nature. He knew all of it was going to happen. He knew it was going to occur, and that grace still extends to you. So when we're sharing the gospel with people, when we're talking about Jesus, you can give that to them. That's one of the things that makes this very, very applicable and immensely important. Do not be afraid to tell people about this unchanging God and make them aware of the ability they can fall on that rock.
That's right.
They will be able to find salvation in him, right? That's huge for us to remember.
Yeah. Proverbs says, the name of the Lord is a strong tower.
Oh, man. Come on.
The righteous run to it, and they are saved.
So good.
Amen.
So good. All right. So, like, honestly, I feel like this was the introduction to the conversation. I want to go for like another hour, but again, I don't even know who's got left with this at this point. But this is such a great and wonderful topic. For takeaways for you guys, like in particular, one thing, if this confused you, like if you're out there and this is just too much, whatever, I just want to go back to what Pat said and what we've been talking about. Read scripture. Read scripture. Read scripture. If you need to listen to scripture, I'll do a little plug. I ran onto an app yesterday called Dwell. That's a paid app. You got to pay for it. But I think they exist the idea of like you hearing scripture. So it's just called the Dwell Bible app. Look for that on your Apple iTunes or Google Play, whatever the things that people get apps on. But you can just play the scripture, and it's got different paths for you to be able to listen to, and you can be washed over with the scripture. They got like different voices and stuff, like with cool accents, and you can change your music. Anyway, just get yourself in the Word. And then when these things come up that seem a little weird to you, you'll go, oh, I got a footing for that somewhere.
That's right.
I read something there or whatever. Spend your time in the Word of God. I guarantee you're not going to find any way better to spend it. So,
awesome.
Other takeaways: read hard things, get into hard things. Right?
Amen.
And then
talk to your pastors about hard things.
And then talk about it. You might start spewing some air. We might start spewing some air, but we're going to sharpen each other. And then we'll go, oh, you're right. I was wrong. My bad. And then we just get sharper.
That's really good. Be gracious about these topics. When you talk about these things that are complex, you will probably say something wrong.
As will we.
So do it with brothers that you can go, hold on, I don't think you meant to say that. And you're like, I didn't mean to say that, right? Because when you're talking about these things, one word can be the difference between
heresy and orthodoxy.
It's what is it they say? The truth is a nice edge, right?
That's right.
And we want to be sure to stay on it. Fellas, thank you so much for being a
stuff.
part of this. This is awesome. Man. I'm sure we'll stay around and talk for it longer after we're done. But listeners and viewers, thank you for joining us. We will have one more episode next week. That'll be our final episode in the Running with Joy series. Please join us then. Until then, keep your eyes fixed, your minds focused, and your affections set on our great and glorious God. Thank you.
Amen.